inside. Thursday night, how's it going? Alright, strip back, good crack, multi-trade podcast. Share the knowledge you know, help to make our sector grow. Everybody's learning from experts and the journeyman. Insights.
What's the story, everyone, and welcome back to another bonus episode of the Stripped Back podcast. I'm Stephen Buckley, and before we get into this one, I just want to say a massive shout out to our main sponsor, Snickers Workwear Ireland, for their continued support, and just want to give a shout out to N2 Electrical in Ashbourne for housing the podcast from season 9 onwards. On this episode, I want to talk about something that's been on my mind a lot recently, and that's limits. More specifically, the limits that we place on ourselves, professionally and personally. Because if there's one thing I've learned throughout my career, it's that the biggest obstacle you'll often face isn't a qualification or an employer or a lack of opportunity or even a lack of experience. It's your own mindset. It's the belief that you've already reached your ceiling, that you've gone as far as you're supposed to go, that you've found your lane and that you should stay in it. And I think that's something that affects a lot of people within the trades. You start your apprenticeship, you do all your phases, you finish your apprenticeship, become qualified, you've gained experience, you've become good at your job, and before you know it, 10 to 15 years have passed. And not because you weren't capable of more, but because you've never stopped to ask yourself what more might actually look like. For years, I identified myself as an electrician. That was my profession. That was my skill set. That's what I knew. And I was proud of it. I still am proud of it. But somewhere along the way, I realised something, that being an electrician wasn't my limit. It was just my starting point. And one thing I've discovered is that many tradespeople underestimate themselves. They look at management roles, business roles, leadership positions, or even running their own company and think, that's not for me. I wouldn't know what to do with that. I'm only an electrician. I'm only a plumber. I'm only a carpenter. I'm just a tradesman. But when you actually break down what makes somebody successful in those positions, you'll often realise you've already been developing those skills for years. Every day on site you're solving problems, you're managing time, communicating with customers, working under pressure, making big decisions, organising workloads, planning jobs not just on your own but as part of a team, taking responsibility for those jobs. Those are management skills. Those are leadership skills. The only difference is that you might not have recognised them as such during that time. Sometimes we become so focused on what we don't know that we completely overlook what we already know. And one thing I've noticed throughout my career is that growth nearly always starts with a feeling of discomfort. Your first live board was uncomfortable to work around. Your first call out alone was uncomfortable to go to. Your first major project was uncomfortable to get across the line, but you got there, you got through it, and every challenge that happened along the way made you better for it. The same thing happens when opportunities arise outside of your comfort zone. Recently, I've had the opportunity to move into an assistant management role, and if I'm honest, there were parts of it that felt completely uncomfortable and unfamiliar. Client meetings, billing files, health and safety audits, employee relations, operational planning and financial reporting falling within the remit of the position, and none of those things were part of my day-to-day life on the tools. But instead of looking at them and saying, that's not for me, I decided to look at them as an opportunity to learn. And that's the mindset I wish more people would adopt. You don't need to know everything before you start. You learn by doing, you learn by showing up, you learn by asking questions, you learn by making those mistakes. Nobody walks into a new role knowing everything. The people who progress are usually the people that are willing to learn. Don't let your current role or your current job define your future. I think one of the most dangerous things we can do is allow your current role to define or limit your future potential in life and in your career. Just because you're seen as an electrician today doesn't mean that's all you'll ever be. You could become a supervisor, a contracts manager, a business owner, even a consultant, a trainer, or even a lecturer. Something completely outside of the trade altogether can be built upon the skills that you have developed within it. The skills you develop in one role often become the foundation for something bigger within another. But you'll never discover what's possible if you've already decided that it's impossible. Too many people spend their lives waiting for permission to move forward, waiting for someone else to tell them that they're ready, waiting for someone to recognize their potential for them. The reality is nobody is coming to do that for you. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in your own potential first. And one thing I never want to lose is the curiosity, the willingness to learn something new, the willingness to ask questions, the willingness to admit that I don't know everything. Because the moment you think you've got it all figured out is the moment where the growth stops and you start to slow down. Every new responsibility teaches you something. Every new challenge develops a new skill. Every conversation exposes you to a different perspective. The world becomes much bigger when you stop viewing learning as something that ends after your apprenticeship or after you're qualified. In reality, that's where it starts. This is probably the biggest message I want to leave you with today, and it's that nobody else gets to decide your ceiling. Not your employer, not your colleagues, not your friends, and especially not your family. And certainly not the voice in your own head that tells you that you're not ready, that you're not capable. The people who achieve great things aren't always the most talented. They're often the people who simply refuse to put limits on themselves. The people who keep moving forward. The ones who stayed curious. The ones who took opportunities. The ones who stepped into rooms they didn't feel qualified to be in and learned as they went. Because confidence doesn't come before action. Confidence comes after the action. If you're listening to this today and you've been thinking about applying for that role or taking on that new challenge, starting your own business, studying that course, or putting yourself forward for an opportunity you've been talking yourself out of for years, this is your sign to stop limiting yourself. You don't need all the answers. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need the courage to take that first step. Because your current position is not your final destination. Your trade qualification isn't your limit. Your experience that you've gained is not your limit. Your background is definitely not your limit. The only real limits are the ones that you accept and the ones that you put on yourself. So keep learning, keep growing, keep challenging yourself, and never let anyone else decide how far you can go. Thanks for listening to this bonus episode of the Stripped Back Podcast. Until next time, keep pushing forward and keep believing in what's possible. Take it easy. Have a good one.